Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. This is the first CX Files podcast of 2019, so Happy New Year, everybody. In this episode, I'm speaking with Melissa O'Brien. Melissa's the Research Vice President for Customer Engagement, Retail and Travel at HfS Research. She's based in Boston, Massachusetts. This podcast is being released on January 4th, and we recorded it on January 3rd. So I took the opportunity to ask Melissa about her CX experience in 2018 and what she's looking forward to in 2019. Okay, so let's go straight to the interview. Okay, so Melissa, thanks for taking the call. It's the 3rd of January, so we're right at the start of 2019. Looking back at 2018, were there any sort of developments in the CX industry or contact centers in general that you think were particularly interesting or stood out as quite a big change during the last year?
Yeah, sure, Mark. So I think that one of the biggest things that I observed is this kind of shift about the way we're thinking about customer centricity. And at HfS, we've been following a framework that we call the One Office, which is really about kind of the entire organization pivoting to look at, to aligning to the customer. And, doing that, putting together some different technologies, using data more efficiently to really just become a more intelligent organization that can service the customer and therefore be more competitive. So from a CX perspective, looking at the contact center or customer service and some of the more traditional elements, I think what we're starting to see is a shift toward more intelligent customer engagement. So meaning more well-designed, more holistic and well thought through. I think when I've spoken with a lot of my clients this year, I've heard a lot of, hey, our website and our marketing guys and our social media was completely separate from what we were doing here. And there's no back and forth. And that is shifting and changing and, making things, I think, a lot. It's certainly a work in progress, but, companies sort of having that viewpoint and that goal to get to that more holistic customer experience, I think is what we're starting to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's interesting because I think what we see quite often is startup companies, they have customer centricity right at the heart of what they're doing, but it's the big incumbent heritage businesses that really need their approach shaken up. I mean, is that the sort of companies that you're working with?
Yeah, both. And it's actually interesting because they're coming from opposite sides of the spectrum. So you've got, as you said, these, kind of digital heritage companies that they have that at sort of their core and in their DNA of being customer centric. And they're usually pretty platform oriented and driven by mobile and social and things of that nature. They're almost on the other side where they're growing quickly and they need more traditional customer service because they're growing and they've got folks that want to contact them. And they have to figure out how to manage that. Whereas on the other hand, the more traditional companies that maybe have these enormous contact center operations are trying to figure out how do you pivot that to more digital customer engagement and make those things complementary to one another. So in some ways, they both have those challenges because everything's happening so fast and the technology's catching up quickly as well, or moving quickly, and we're trying to catch up.
Okay, great. So customer centricity was clearly one of the big trends for last year. What are you looking out for as we're looking right from now at the start of the year into the rest of 2019?
So we did a lot of research last year about cognitive assistance, which is one of the terms that's being used for basically more intelligent automated interaction tools. So you hear about chatbots or you hear about virtual assistants. And what we started to look at is the ecosystem around having a cognitive assistant that's a lot more intelligent than something that's just rules-based, very logic-oriented, programmed, to something that can actually understand customer intent, customer language, using natural language processing and tools like that, that potentially has the capability to learn. So these tools are getting more and more advanced. And I think, looking forward, we're going to continue this research into the products realm in 2019, as we looked at more on the services side last year. But I think what we're going to see is these things continue to mature. And, that's going to help that more intelligent customer engagement that we were just talking about. But it's also going to replace some of this self-service stuff, I think, that has really just become kind of a hurdle or a block in the road. I mean, you've seen a lot of these chatbots that people were so excited about back when they were first deployed, whether it's IKEA's Anna, I don't think she's on the site anymore, KLM's Bluebot. These things have been retired and put away because they were basically glorified FAQs. And people don't want that. They can do a Google search or they can search the website. Those functionalities are pretty basic. What they want to be able to do is interact in a way that's simple and effective, whether it's with a human or with a cognitive assistant, shall we say. And a lot of times those cognitive assistants are going to be helping the people who are live chatting or live talking with the customer rather than interacting directly with the customer. But there's a lot of impact that those things can have because of the capabilities that are more intelligent and go well beyond what we've seen in the past. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. And I think it's going to have a real impact.
So when you're talking about and doing research on cognitive assistance, are you talking about like a blend of different technologies such as process automation with AI, with machine learning, this kind of thing?
That's exactly right. And the term gets used a lot, conversational AI. So I think that's probably the bucket that you would put it in, is something that's actually has the capability to interact, but there are elements, there are building blocks underneath it that enable that tool to learn and to be more predictive, have context, understand potentially emotion, understand semantics, and things of that nature. So it's it's some pretty interesting stuff that's getting put together now.
Okay, and just a final question, just on a comment you made there about Google. Do you think that quite a lot of brands don't actually understand that most people seem to turn to Google or another search engine before they ever come to customer service anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think companies are starting to understand that, and starting to understand sort of the crowdsourced element as well. The fact that people are looking to each other rather than to each other or to Google rather than I'm not going to be calling up as my first choice unless it's something very particular or something very serious or dire, I suppose. So I think that realization is starting to happen, and the services that we're seeing and the adoption of services around customer journey mapping to understand what the person's process is, given all sorts of different potential scenarios or situations as far as what they're trying to accomplish, I think speaks to that fact that companies are starting to learn, okay, this is what our customers want and this is how they go about it. And in the future, I think that will get a lot more predictive to where customers actually are be able to better design their own experiences, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great, Melissa. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.